You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode, we're covering the American-Canadian monster horror film, The Monster, written and directed by Bryan Bertino, released November 11th, 2016.
You know, I like this because I feel like we've been covering more movies that are in this last decade, and it's been real interesting and fun to do that.
Yeah.
Compared to some of the older ones.
Definitely. But this is one that went completely under the radar. Like, this was 4 years ago. I didn't even know this movie existed until we started this podcast and we were looking up movies we might want to cover at some point. And so it's been kind of sitting on our list just after we looked at it, but I had never heard of it and knew nothing about it until then.
Me neither. Not since we did that initial look through all the movies that might potentially fit within our podcast world.
Yeah.
So we did decide that we would check it out, and we are bringing you our opinions and thoughts on lots of things in the film The Monster.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how they got that name. How they, such a generic thing. You think, they'd be like, oh, there's already, a billion movies called The Monster, but not really. It's...
Mm-mm.
People kind of think more outside the box, but it works.
From what I understand, it was originally going to be called There Are Monsters.
Mm-hmm.
I think it kind of ties into something that Lizzie is saying at the beginning.
Yeah, it kind of comes from her, monologue.
Yeah, but then when it was getting ready to be distributed, they changed the title to The Monster. I kind of think There Are Monsters might have been a better title just because it would tie into the movie better. Knowing that Lizzie gave that monologue at the beginning, I just think it might have worked out a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's okay.
Works for me.
Yeah, me too. So let's dive in with some behind-the-scenes information.
All
There
right.
was not a lot. I had to dig to find some of the information. It just wasn't out there readily available. It was filmed in Ottawa, Ontario, in some of the rural areas of Ottawa.
Mm-hmm. I can add something that I know is not on your list, even though you did the digging.
Ooh.
Just because that fits in right of where they filmed. You said the rural areas is the actual little stretch of road that they're on does not exist.
No, it doesn't.
They built this stretch of road in the middle of the woods just for the film.
I know. Now, why did they do that, I wonder?
It guarantees a closed road set, I guess, if you make the road.
Yes. Yes.
You won't have to worry about any traffic wanting to come through because it doesn't exist as a road.
No. I guess that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So, as we mentioned, Bryan Bertino wrote and directed the film, but he was also a producer. He also directed 2008's The Strangers and was involved as a writer for the 2018 sequel, The Strangers Pray at Night. The budget for this film was $3 million, but it had a limited box office release where it only brought in about $74,000.
Mm-hmm.
Was released on video on demand, though, at the same time, and we never really know how to gauge that, and those numbers I have just not ever been able to find.
Mainly because a lot of streaming services, I know Netflix 100% does it, and I'm sure that, which it's on Netflix, but I don't now, because that's how we watched it, but I don't think it was released originally on Netflix. I think it was a DirecTV thing, and then, other, Amazon Prime and Vudu and other, on-demand services will get these kind of things. But I know streaming services and on-demand services don't release their numbers publicly for the most part.
Yeah.
I don't know why they don't do it necessarily, but I know Netflix has been very, well known about not releasing their numbers.
Yeah, it makes it difficult to be able to really know what kind of penetration a film has when you don't let those numbers out.
Yeah.
So I was looking into Rotten Tomatoes, and it seems like the movie did have a lot of critical applause, basically, even though fans may not have even known about it or been very happy with it. The critics seem to like it.
Cool.
So I think that that's pretty good. It clocks in at about 91 minutes, so it's not a long watch.
No.
And Pake, why don't you give us the synopsis of the monster?
All right. A mother and daughter must confront a terrifying monster when they break down on a deserted road. Which I don't know if I would use the word break down more. I mean, they break down because of like a wreck kind of situation. But
yeah, they kind of hit something, and I think the front axle breaks.
Yes.
According to Jesse, who we didn't see very long, but, you know. He seemed to know what he was talking about, so we're going to trust that he did.
Yeah, it was hard to tell. Even, like, the movie's dark, even, like, you know, with all the lights off in my apartment and, like, really trying to focus. It was still hard to tell exactly what had happened. Because it kind of looked like there's, like, these, like, shards, like, sticking all out the side of the car. Like, it had been, like, impaled with stuff. I was like, is that not the least bit, like, concerning or weird when you're, like, inspecting the damage? Like, oh, no, we hit the wolf, and, oh, the tire. And, like, what about the entire, like, just holes in the side of the car? Let's ignore that.
Yeah, it looked like it had been, you know, really beaten down.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was more than a monster or a horror film.
Yeah.
There was a lot to do with, like, this conflicted parent-child, mother-daughter dynamic.
Yeah. So I want to say probably, and I had this kind of in my notes, and I didn't say anything right off the top, which I kind of wanted to, but then I'll get to it at this point, and I'm sure we will also have said something when posting, you know, that this is coming out and leading up to it. I actually kind of did want to, you know, whatever. It's I hate that I have to, like, come ahead of things, be like, I know people are going to complain or, like, think it's stupid to have a, like, quote unquote trigger warning, but for people that find it necessary, it's very necessary to them. So, like, I'm gonna be feisty today. I don't know. So if you have a problem with us posting a trigger warning about something, it's not for you, and shut up.
Because guess what? This is the Run for Your Lives universe.
Yeah.
And Pake and I are the captains.
Because, yeah, I think going into this, because it was a little hard for me. Like, I had to kind of shift my thought process going into this because I was not expecting it. So hopefully I can give that little warning to some people that, like, this movie dives into some, like, pretty disturbing and kind of dark, you know, it is a parent, you know, the mother-daughter kind of thing, but it is, I mean, it lays on the line of, like, domestic abuse and drug addiction and alcoholism and things like that. And it can be rough if you're not ready for it. So I want to go ahead and, you know, set up that pretense there.
Absolutely. You know what? I appreciate those warnings sometimes when something's going to happen.
Yeah, because I could see that, like, somebody that things like that would affect on a more personal level going into this movie blind like I did and like you did.
Yeah.
That might not be something fun to just, like, stumble upon in a movie that you're expecting to have a good time with. So.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it at all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Not at all. And about 10 minutes in, I realized that I was in the middle of something that was a lot different than what I was thinking it was going to be.
Yeah.
I started wondering, is this monster even real? Or is it a metaphor for the relationship that Lizzie and Kathy have? And to me, it ended up being so much deeper than just another monster movie that we cover.
Yeah.
It's so dark. There were parts of it as I was watching it, and then I rewatched it again today, because I was trying to pinpoint the exact moment that things started to really shift.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're watching it through these flashbacks that they give us, and we will get into the characters because we always do.
Yeah.
But I feel like we should talk about some of this stuff first before we dive into that. In this movie, the flashbacks really give us a chance to look into the previous relationship that Lizzie has with her mother, Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that Lizzie has really become this caretaker of her mother. And through the first flashback, we see that Kathy wants to take Lizzie to her play because Lizzie is in a play at school, and Lizzie does not want her mother to be there.
Yeah, she's, like, ashamed of who her mother is. And it's just, she's like, I want this to be a good thing and a good time, and so I don't want you there. And, I mean, that's going to be hard for anybody, but
yeah,
like, you see from, you know, you kind of see it from both sides in that moment.
Yes, because I think that Kathy wants to be a good mother or wants to be there for her daughter, I guess. But Lizzie just does not want anyone there to embarrass her. This is a really special night for her. And it isn't necessarily the decision to go or not to go. It was the way that Kathy reacted to Lizzie and basically said, fuck you. I lost count of the time she was saying it.
Yeah.
Then Lizzie starts returning it to her, and then at the end says that she hates her mother. And then Kathy responds with, okay, find your own ride. And you look at this and think, you're the adult in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And you could respect your child's wishes, or you could, there's something else you could do. Yelling profanities at your child.
Yeah.
And not talking to her in a way that's respectful and understanding, it's just not okay. And I felt like that first glimpse made me really, really angry at Kathy.
Yeah, it's rough. And the way I look at it is, because Kathy does not treat Lizzie like her daughter.
No.
They fight and bicker and have a relationship almost like sisters.
Yes.
And the thing is because they could be age-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to make like a, broad, general statement on like teenage mothers and young mothers, because it doesn't apply to everyone. Everybody's situation is different.
Mm-hmm.
But it is giving some kind of backstory to this character of Kathy, that whatever situation she was in to end up with, because you can clearly see, like, she was very young when she had Lizzie. And even through that situation, she still hasn't grown up and she's still a child.
Yes.
And so she's, I don't want to throw around terms like even around about fictional characters of like not fit to be a mother, but like mature wise, like she has proven pretty early on in the movie that she's not in the mentality and mindset to be a parent.
I agree. And I think the next flashback takes you to that point where you see Kathy sitting on the doorstep trying to talk herself into going to bed and not drinking. But she gives in and goes over to the trash and pulls a bottle out that still had some in it and drinks it. And then Lizzie wakes up, finds her mother is not in bed, but she's in the bathroom and she's been sick. She's lying on the floor. And Lizzie just flushes the toilet and lays down with her mother and holds her.
Which I cried. That hit me. I got a little teary-eyed at that point. That was the first time that this movie like hit me, where I was like, I'm trying to find these like words, because it's, Kathy's Kathy's dealing. It is. She's, even at this young age, like she's at least understanding that she has a problem, that she's an alcoholic. Yes. And she is, at least at that point in her life, she was trying to be sober. So, I don't want to like just throw her under the bus of being like, she's not fit because she gave up and she went back to it, because that, belittles the whole, process of addiction and alcoholism and how real of a monster that is to people. And so, so I don't blame her for struggling. And so that's why that part hit me more emotionally, because I could understand like, okay, she's trying, because they even make sure to show like this little like calendar on the fridge where like they'd been like marking off the days that she was successful or unsuccessful, whichever it was. I couldn't tell either she was doing really good and had a bad time, or she was doing real bad, but her Lizzie was still like cheerleading her, cheering her on anyway. Yeah. And like believing in her to some degree. And so even when she can't fight it and you see that she's like passed out on the floor and she's been throwing up and stuff, poor Lizzie, I'm sure she's upset and disappointed, but she's not angry. She just cleans up like she always does. Mm-hmm. And she still loves her mother in that moment. And I think she always did. She had some moments, going into the next flashback where she literally is holding a knife to her sleeping mother, like, like, I hate you, go away. Yes. And I don't think she means it. Maybe in that moment she feels she does, but there's still a love and a bond there, as strained as it is. I think that Lizzie at that point was exhausted, mentally and emotionally. She's a child. She's a little girl, but she's having to parent herself, but not only be her own parent, but she's having to parent her mother.
Yes.
She's the one having to set alarms and get up and clean up all the shit from the night before, all the beer bottles and the ashtrays and all this, and get her mother out of bed to do the things that they're supposed to do because her mom can't control her own schedule.
Yeah, exactly. And the final flashback that we get was she's taken Roy's keys. Now, Roy is her mother's boyfriend, and she has Roy's keys. And I wasn't sure, does she have Roy's keys so he can't leave, or because she hates him? Like, I can't figure out why.
What I got from that is that she knew that Roy and her mother were drunk and had been drinking, and they probably had quite the track record of driving while drunk to go out and get more booze. So I'm sure Lizzie at that point was just, I think that's why she was hiding the keys, was she didn't want her mother going out because she's drunk.
And that's smart, but a child should not have to do that. And it broke my heart watching this poor girl, because when we meet her at the very beginning, she is basically cleaning up the house and waking her mother up so that they can go to her dad's, because her mother's going to drive her to her father's. And she wants to go to her father's. Like, we don't ever meet him in this movie. But Lizzie really wants to go to her dad's.
Yeah.
And I think when I started the movie, I was feeling so sorry for Lizzie and so angry at Kathy for being so selfish all the time. But then throughout the film, once they hit this particular point in the film, I felt like I started to understand Kathy a little bit more. And a lot of it is tied to having a child too young and not being mature enough to handle the responsibility.
Yeah.
And so with your child, you're growing up. And that's really, I can imagine, must be a very difficult situation to be in. And so I think we're at the point that we can start really talking about the characters.
Yeah. Kind of a deeper level. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we've given, kind of this, I think giving, in this case with this film, though we don't do it with all the films that we cover, I feel like in this case, we really had to dig into the beginning and get that, kind of a circle approach of what the story is about, who the two people were as a mother-daughter. And now we can kind of break into things a little bit as we go.
Sure. So, yeah. Who do we start with? I mean, there's really only two characters, so.
There are. I mean, we have other characters, but the amount of time they spend on the screen is so small that you really can't.
Yeah.
There's not much to say. There are a few points I have on a couple of them, but it's not anything too long. So I feel like let's start with Kathy, just because I feel like she is the one that we see a lot of growth in throughout the movie, based on what we saw at the beginning. And she's played by Zoe Kazan. Originally, I believe that Elizabeth Moss had signed on to play this role, but she was unable to do it. So Zoe Kazan, another Canadian actress, was able to step in, and I think she did a really good job. Yeah. And, Kathy is like, as we've talked about, she's kind of this dysfunctional wreck of a person. She's an alcoholic and just really not, she doesn't have it together at all.
No.
But
like you mentioned, I think she wants to be a better mother. It's just that she's not willing to put in the work to do it.
Yes.
But you see those little moments kind of break through, and I think the ones that hit me kind of the hardest. I mean, first one is when she gives Lizzie her mother's watch, grandma's watch, and partially it's because you're the one that's keeping track of time anyway. I don't even have any use for this, because I don't know what time it is from one moment to another. You're the one keeping everything scheduled together. But then also it's like, I wanted you to have this, and this is something like an heirloom I wanted to pass to you. And I know that you've had enough of me, and after I drop you off at your dad's, you're not coming back to me. So this is the time to give it to you.
That scene really hit me. Because you could tell she's resigned herself to understanding her daughter does not want to be around her, and it's kind of the first step of her letting go of, those feelings. I mean, she's got these feelings, and it's really hard for her to articulate them other than to say, I'm giving you this watch.
Mm-hmm.
You're not coming back. I know you're not coming back. Even though Lizzie said I didn't say that. That Lizzie just wants to get out of there.
But yeah, Kathy's like, you don't have to say it because you've shown that in the way that you look at me and the way that our relationship has gone. I know. And so at least she's dialed in enough to her daughter to know that. And then the other one that I have written down here that is a lot more subtle, but it actually did like make me have to like pause the movie and like, so it made me take pause literally for a moment where I was like, ooh, like, but it was like the smallest little thing is when they're standing there and it's like, it's about to start raining. And Lizzie says, well, I hate thunder. And she goes back to the car. And while Kathy's sitting there smoking, she just kind of mumbles to herself under her breath a little bit. She's like, I know you do. Like, I've been paying attention. I know, you are my child and I know the things that you love and hate and dislike and like, and the things that, make you who you are. I'm paying that much attention at least, even if I don't show it. And like all of that's like subconsciously thrown in this like one little like mumbled line, but it was enough to really like hit me to be like, oof.
Yeah.
She is her mother.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how terrible of a job she does at it, she is, and she doesn't know who her daughter is.
She does, and I think that Kathy she's complex to begin with, and I think that she may not want to give herself any credit for anything she does do right. And though we know why Lizzie doesn't like her and wants to be away from her, you can still see that Kathy is, while she may be dysfunctional, she still does care about her daughter. But at that point, I still felt like that Lizzie was still the caretaker of her mother as well. Like it hadn't really transitioned to Kathy being the mother.
Yeah.
And not the sister.
Yeah. There's like these little things, which are beautiful to see. I still think even if the whole thing with the monster and like death and horrible things weren't a part of this story, I still would have to look at Kathy and say, oh, that's sweet, but it's too little too late. And you've done your damage.
Yeah, and she did a lot of damage. I mean, Lizzie has not had the greatest childhood, as we can see, based on everything that's happening. She still tries with her mother. But even in some of the most ridiculous things, when they do have the car crash, instead of taking the phone and calling 911, she has Lizzie call 911.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of calling 911 herself. And I just am trying to figure out what mother would have their daughter call 911 after a car crash.
I know, because you can see like the panic on this little girl's face being like, where are we? Where is that? I don't know. If you're getting to the point where Kathy's having to be like, well, tell them this and this and this. Tell them your own damn self.
Right? Yes. Yes. That's what I was screaming at the TV. It's like, why are you doing this? Oh my goodness. But again, it was still showing I'm your mother, but I'm not your mother. Like, I'm not parenting you. We're sisters on a joyride or something. And yeah, I didn't. There was also the point once Jesse shows up, which Jesse is this tow truck driver.
Yeah. When
Jesse comes in, and instead of, Jesse has taken the bags and put them in his truck because he's going to tow the car. And then Kathy decides that she wants Lizzie to call her father. And the phone is in the bags that are in Jesse's truck. And instead of going to get the phone herself, she says, Lizzie, go ask Jesse to get the phone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, do you take any responsibility? That's not what I just kept thinking.
The only responsibility she's putting on herself is to make sure she sits there and chain smokes the whole night.
Yep.
That's about it.
She did that well. She did real well with that. That was not a problem. She gets an A+ on that part of it.
Yeah. And so, we could, shit on Kathy all night. And it's one of those things, it's like all the problems, but like she does have her own redemption arc and she does become a better person by the end. And you start seeing it in little ways. I mean, of course, after everything happens with Jesse being just mutilated and violently murdered and eaten and whatever, where they're scared. And then, because they could have easily, I probably even could have easily just stayed there in the car waiting for the ambulance to show up at that point. But it's been so long, and Kathy kind of puts it on herself. She's like, okay, it's time to actually be a freaking parent for once. And you stay here. I've got to come up with some kind of plan. It's like the door to Jesse's truck is open. Mm-hmm. He had his keys. He was fumbling with them when he got taken. The keys are out there. The doors are, if I can get to the keys to the truck, we can get out of here. And it's the first brave and useful thing she has done this entire movie. And she's finally just, actually putting, some effort in,
Yeah, I thought too, the way she was comforting Lizzie after Jesse's arm just appears on the hood of the car, that was when I first started seeing her shift.
Yeah.
But she didn't really completely shift until she was given this dilemma of, should she stay in the car? They see Jesse outside trying to crawl to his truck. And Lizzie begs her mother not to get out of the car. And Kathy listens to her, and basically they watch Jesse die and get dragged off by the monster. And at that point, that is when Kathy admits that she was wrong about monsters and that they do exist, and she's really comforting Lizzie. They're kind of laying in the front seat and they're just talking. And that's when you really start to see, oh my goodness. She's admitted that monsters are real. She's comforting her daughter. And I felt like we were starting to see. And then, as you said, when she decided that she needed to go get the keys, it was this continuation of, oh my goodness, she's shifting, she's getting brave, and she's starting to think of her daughter first. And I wasn't ready for that.
But she never really gets a chance to enact that plan anyway, because I knew that little dog toy was going to come back into play.
Yes.
It did. It starts singing its little song, and of course it brings the monster back to know where they're at.
Yep.
And yeah, that was quite just a sequence of it just ripping her out through the window and the ambulance saving them. But then, there was just so much back to back to back in that moment of her getting attacked and then the ambulance coming up and then it scaring the monster away enough to get them in the ambulance. But then the monster comes back and takes out the paramedics. And then Kathy decides, well, now we need to drive the ambulance away. And they start driving in the ambulance, and then bam, here comes the monster again. And I was wondering, I'm jumping just ahead a little bit on notes about the monster, but because I noticed with the arm dropping onto the hood and then how fast it got to the ambulance, I was like, is this thing flying? Is that how it's getting a hub?
Flying.
And
I think it was flying.
Yeah, it was a note that I had, but I couldn't really tell until jumping kind of to the end when Lizzie sets it on fire. That's when I could actually see that it did have wings like a bat. Yes. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's cleared a lot up. Cool.
I wondered that too. I'm like, how is it getting everywhere so fast? Mm. And then I wasn't even sure I saw wings. Yeah. So I'm glad that you did as well. So, because that kind of reinforces it. That's what I saw as well.
Yes. It's like, okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, I'm jumping a lot more toward the end, but that's really all there is left to do.
Yeah.
Other than, we haven't talked about the wolf situation yet, which, there's a little bit to that. Mainly the only notes I have was no, fuck that. I don't care how dead it looks. I'm not walking up to it in the middle of the road. I don't know what you people are doing.
No, I agreed. I would not do that. That doesn't make sense. It's just another rule. Don't go look at dead things. I
don't care how dead you think it looks. It's a wild animal. Don't go near it.
Yeah.
Don't touch it.
Definitely not. And when you dig a claw out of it, then you go and get back in the car and you don't move. Because you don't know where that claw came from.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, it was almost as big as what I've seen from Jurassic Park with the velociraptors. It's that is, no, there is no way that you are going to get me near that wolf.
Mm-mm.
I'm sorry it got hit, but oh my goodness. Yeah. There is no way. No way at all.
Yeah. So I was just kind of jumping to the end with, the next thing we really get with Kathy is that she has turned that leaf enough to where now And it was really cool, like the way they kind of did it quickly and showed that as she's sitting outside the ambulance with Lizzie still in there, and it almost like her own like flashbacks of it, like taking everything back, like the horrible things that she's done in her position of a mother, and like how she's, you know, denied Lizzie of like the you know, raising that she deserves and the things that she needs. And it kind of comes back to like, she has this realization, like, this is the time for me to step up. And yes, it means I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the ultimate sacrifice that she decides to, you know, she's finally making the parental decision.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I don't know, I can complain about that, because if we've, you know, established that the monster hates light, I don't know why you're going to try to, like, lure it away with a light and then put your light out. Like, okay.
I did not understand that whatsoever.
Then make the torch, or just carry a flashlight and both of you go together somewhere. Like, it's an ultimate sacrifice, and I think it was very selfless and a beautiful action, but I don't think it was necessary at all.
I don't think so either. And I question it. When she was outside, I mean, she was throwing up blood, so she had internal bleeding.
Yeah. And maybe that's what it was, is she knew she wasn't going to be able to make the journey anyway. So give her daughter a better chance. I don't know.
But I did appreciate the conversation that she and Lizzie had, where she tells Lizzie, you know, yes, we'll meet at the truck, or she acted like she wasn't going to die. Like, she wasn't dying.
Well, initially she said she was, but then Lizzie was like, well, I'm going to go get help and bring them back. And she's like, yes, that's the plan. Let's do that. Whatever she can tell her daughter to get her out of there. Like,
yes.
Giving her that false hope of just like, yep, sure, go get help and come back and save me. That sounds great. Like,
but she did try to tell her the truth. Yeah. Like, she did try to tell her, I'm not going to make it. It's okay. I want, you know, just, you need to run. When I tell you, you need to run. Mm-hmm. And I appreciated that, because that continued this arc of redemption for her. But again, like you said, I don't think that it was necessary.
No.
I feel like that, you know, they got that, she had that pipe that she wrapped in a towel and then set it on fire. I feel like between that and the flashlight, they might have been okay.
Yeah, that should have given them enough protection. Because, I mean, we've seen several times now, she shines the flashlight in the monster's face and it leaves. Yes. It hates light that much. So
it does.
Seems like it should be a pretty given, like, okay, keep the light on you and get out of there.
Absolutely. I did like how Lizzie, you know, she used her teddy dog, because it was a dog.
Yeah.
She used the singing to lure it.
Yeah, it was like bait.
And she's got this antiseptic spray and a lighter, her mother's lighter. And then she's just like, I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you. And then she just lets it loose and the monster burns.
Yeah. That was the most flammable monster I've seen in my life.
You know, I wondered if they were going to try to do something to make it burn, like throw a bottle of alcohol on it to get it, you know, covered in something. No, it did survive the burning, but then she beat it with a stick. I was like, okay. That's all right. Pretty badass, Lizzie. You are a badass. That is for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the dog, so I guess, you know, kind of going to Lizzie. I think that, like, dog builds its own arc on her. As the first time we see it is, you know, she's listening to it because it soothes her and it gives her, kind of calms her down. And her mom has this kind of like, you know, you're too old for that. And it's, what I have is that, you know, it's this semblance of a normal childhood that she clings to. So even if she is too old for it and it's, you know, a little baby, you know, little toddler kid thing, it's all she has of any kind of childhood left to hold on to, because she's been forced to grow up so fast.
Agreed.
And so I think her using it as bait and like throwing it aside, that is that arc of her being like accepting who she is now. She has been forced to grow up, and now she's going to have to live with that and do the best she can with that, instead of holding on to what she didn't have and wasn't going to have anyway.
Agreed. I wondered if maybe that was something that she had back in her early childhood when when her parents were still together,
Mm-hmm.
if they ever were completely together. I feel like that did represent, like you said, it represents this piece of childhood where she felt safe and was maybe happier. And she held on to it. And I know that when her mom is telling her that she's too old for it, she actually says back, I'm too old for a lot of things.
Oh, no, she tells her mom, "You're too old for a lot of things." It's kind of a dig.
You're too old for.
It's a dig.
Okay.
It's a dig at Kathy for the fact that she's still up all night partying and drinking and smoking and having Roy over and not doing, and it's like, well, you're too old to be acting the way that you do, but you do anyway. So let me have this.
That makes total sense. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I feel like the acting in this movie was really good. I feel like both Ella Ballantyne, who played Lizzie, and Zoe Kazan both really brought a lot to the roles. For me, the raw emotion and genuine performance that Ella Ballantyne brought to Lizzie really connected me to her character, and it kept me invested in the movie. I thought Zoe Kazan did a wonderful job as well, but I was just so connected to Lizzie and wanting her to survive and to thrive. I just wanted her to get to her dance. I just wanted her to get there, and it was so hard to watch it.
Yeah.
And I still feel like the monster is still like a metaphor for a bunch of different things in this film. Like, it's not just the monster attacking them. It was the different parts of their relationship and the different obstacles they were facing. The monster, the monster is the alcohol. The monster is the abuse. The monster is so many things. And so in some cases, I think, the monster might be a better title, even though I originally thought, it's so hard because this movie, it's not one I'm going to watch again. I've already decided. Mm-hmm. I revisited some of it today because I really wanted to dive in and understand a few pieces of it. But, I've done my watching of that. I'm not going to do anymore.
Yeah, I've got a couple little notes, even though I'm kind of jumping to other notes outside of characters, but since you bring up, kind of those themes of the movie and what the monster is and stuff, which the jokey one I have here is well, that was just depressing. I said, the real monster was the friends we made along the way. No, that's not it.
No, it's not.
No,
it's a great thought though.
No, but I think it picks up with when the movie first picks up, the first thing we see is this is children's nursery rhyme from 1903, author unknown.
Oh, yes.
That it just says, they are hiding and watching. Just wait and see. Oh, there are monsters for you and for me. Which I was like, man, nursery rhymes were fucked up. That's is that really something you want to just tell kids? Yeah, but there's a lot of those. Even because her doggy sings, Ring Around the Rosie, and that's Black Plague. And there's a lot of nursery rhymes back in the day really were very disturbing and demented, as the way you would look at them now, but it was used as a way to show kids kind of the dark reality of the world that they're in a more lighthearted way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it does play into the theme of this movie a lot, of having those nursery rhymes and stuff where it's definitely not a lighthearted way what this monster is, but I think the experience that Lizzie has with this monster is showing her that the reality of life that she is in, and it's a very depressing thing. That's why I was like, there's not a happy ending to this movie, even if Lizzie survives, because what this experience has taught Lizzie is life is a monster, and there's monsters there, and you're going to have to deal with this always. And so the stronger that you are as a person and you can get through this, you have to rely on yourself and you have to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are monsters and they are real, whether they look like Venom with wings covered in oil, or if it's your mom's drinking problem. There are monsters.
Agreed. I think that you're 100% right with that.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot that you can take from this film. A lot of little lessons in looking at things and metaphors, and it was just, it was a lot to take in. Considering I thought it was really going to be a mother and daughter breaking down on their way to drop her off at her dad's. I thought that there would be a monster and it was going to be creepy, and I got all of that. The problem is there was a lot more I did not bargain for.
Yeah, was not ready and didn't expect the... Yeah.
I did not expect this emotional feeling and stress it was going to put on me to watch. So it was definitely something that it's going to take me some time to get to, I feel like it almost will take me more time to process than the time we had to get ready for this podcast, because there are just so many emotions and thoughts that I'm having about it. And I'm just not sure where to go with it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to think, is there really any other notes that we have?
There is one scene that is kind of a flashback. It was kind of the final flashback that we saw. It was near the end. Was Kathy's apology to Lizzie, telling her she would grow up to do whatever she wanted and would be a better person than she was.
Yeah.
And that hit me so hard because I'm thinking, yep, Kathy has died and Lizzie at least is remembering something about her mom, telling her something positive.
Oh yeah, I ended this movie in legit tears, so I will give it that. As much as there's a lot of plot holes, and I've appreciated the movie more talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was definitely not a favorite of mine. I was like,
no,
it has a lot of flaws, but I do have to give it its due for the fact that when the credits started rolling and there's tears on my cheeks, I was like, it did its job in that regard, and I will give it that credit.
Yeah. If its mission was to make Pake cry, it succeeded.
Mission accomplished. Yeah.
That's not the emotion that I expected to feel in this movie, though.
Yeah,
exactly. I'm okay with being scared, but sometimes there are things that are brutal that hit, they don't hit close to home, but they make you feel something much deeper than fear. It's just, especially when it's unexpected, it's just almost too much.
Mm-hmm.
I had two other little notes. One, the monster to me seemed secondary at points because of the other, what we've talked about already with the metaphors for all the other obstacles that Lizzie faced. And two, the monster, and this is kind of a funny one, monster gave me these Killer Croc vibes from Batman the Animated Series.
Okay, yeah.
If they painted him all black with some oil, that it was Killer Croc. I just got that, his look reminded me of that. And then at the end with the wings, I'm like, yeah, not so much. But for the most part, yes, that's what I was getting from the movie. Yeah,
the monster was interesting. I don't want to say it was super great and super creepy. Yeah. Because it was a little goofy looking. But I love that the fact that, when looking into this, there's no CGI in this movie whatsoever. The entire monster is all practical effects, and they did everything practically. And I appreciate that. And the one thing that I will give a lot of credit to was the super creepy and great effect the first time we see the monster.
Oh my God.
And so I had to point that out because I pointed out when we recorded the ritual, when we talked about the ritual.
The Shotan, I remember.
Yeah, and how much I just loved that movie for the fact of those special kind of lingering shots where the threat is in the frame, is in the shot the entire time, and you don't know it until it has moved. And when they use that to show the monster for the first time in this movie, I got a little giddy. Because whenever, she's sitting there looking at the wolf, and then you just see over her shoulder its head start rising up. I was like, oh, it was behind her the whole time. It was I loved that, and I'll give it that because that's what I loved about the ritual. So it made me think immediately about that movie, where I was like, it was there the whole time, and you didn't know it until it moved. And I gushed about that when we talked about that movie. So
I remember
you know that it's something that I love. Yeah. So
I got Shotan vibes. Yeah. Immediately during that scene, I'm thinking, I'm seeing it this time. At least it's not I'm watching it and not actually seeing the monster creep up. I actually saw it that time, and oh my God. Oh boy.
So I'll give them credit on that one too. But yeah, I don't really have any other notes other than as far as other characters, I do have a little bit about Jesse, but it's not much because I was just like, hello, Jesse, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you goodbye now. Also,
Goodbye
because
now.
you're probably not going to be hanging around for very long. It's pretty obvious, you know. And then I was like, yeah, no, you just got taken away. It was like, he's gone. Oh, wait, no, he's not gone. He's back.
Oh, wait.
No, there he goes. Okay, yeah, no. We gotta bring him back for just a second so he can have a violent, terrible, agonizing death to traumatize Lizzie even more, and then we can get rid of him.
Oh, he came to help, and I felt like they didn't trust him to help them. They seemed really, to me, cautious. Like, well, here's your tow truck driver, but I don't know. I just got a weird vibe.
Yeah. Again, I'll give them credit for it's a creative writing idea. The fact that they had to have the tow truck driver show up because it was a good way of getting rid of the phone. Because that's kind of this, horror movies are harder and harder to do nowadays because with technology, people are like, okay, hit your alarm on your phone or your smartwatch or this or that, like things like that are becoming a lot more prevalent. So, directors and writers of these kind of movies have to take that kind of stuff into account. So to have the tow truck driver show up and take their bags and put them in his truck because they're going to all get in the truck and tow the car, if the ambulance didn't show up or whatever, so I'll carry your stuff. And then to have that stuff get locked inside the truck. I was like, okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was clever.
Good detail. Yeah.
To do that. There was also one other point with the EMTs where they're in the truck. One of the EMTs, the female EMT, comes back and gets into the truck. The male EMT is dropped onto the windshield.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, she kicks the windshield out and then turns around. It's like Kathy is reaching for her, like she's got her hand out, because she wants to pull her into the back of the truck.
Mm-hmm.
But it's too little too late.
Yeah. What was her plan on there? It's like, I could see, okay, kick the front windshield out so that you can see and drive.
Yeah.
Or get in the back and leave the barrier of the windshield between you and the monster. But don't do both and then get the worst of both ends of that.
No, that was not a smart plan. I liken that to, it was an intense situation and you couldn't think straight. Okay. That's what it is. Because, oh my gosh, I would not be kicking that windshield. I would honestly just have driven ahead, slammed on the brakes till the body flew off, and then driven down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. Or figured out a way to just drive straight. I don't.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that's pretty much all the notes that I had.
Yep. Same here.
So I think that takes us into production notes.
It does.
And I don't have very many because there is not a lot of information out there about this movie. And a few of the items I've already brought up, so now there are even less. So it was distributed in the US by A24, which I know I've said previously, I'm not a big fan of their endeavors. At least a few of them, like Midsommar and Hereditary. Two of my least favorite movies.
So maybe it's you just don't like Ari Aster, because he directed both of those movies.
That could be it. Oh my gosh, Peg, you may have been able to discover why I don't like
They share a director, not just a film production company. So there is that.
All right. I'm down with that. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'll know to just stay away from his movies, because this one I didn't dislike. So that's a good thing. So Zoe Kazan actually reached out to Ella Ballantyne's mother to get pictures of her as a child and baby photos because she wanted to get into the mindset of being her mother. And when Kazan replaced Elizabeth Moss in the lead role, she said she was really captivated by the story of a mother struggling against her worst behaviors to protect her child. And I thought that quote really summed up a lot of this story.
Yeah.
And we've already talked about that. The effects for this were done by Torpedo Pictures, and they've also worked on such wonderful shows as The Expanse, Lovecraft Country, Star Trek Discovery, and one of my personal favorites, Snowpiercer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it.
Cool. Well, then time to get into some quotes, which I have a couple, literally.
I have two as well.
All right. Let's see. What do you have?
So I liked at the start of the movie Lizzie has this little monologue, and I really liked it. I think more than just about anything else in the movie, I really like this monologue. And she says, "My mom tells me there's no such thing as monsters, but she is wrong. They are out there waiting for you, watching. They are in the dark. Sometimes where you see them, sometimes where you don't. I know that now."
It was cool that they bookended the movie with that monologue. It's the same thing, beginning and end.
You know, I think it summed things up quite nicely. It still made me think I'm going down this road to watch a monster movie of this, mom and girl getting, broke down by the side of the road, but that is not what I saw. It was much, much bigger than that. And my second one is when they're in the car, Kathy says to Lizzie, "Monsters are afraid of the light, that's why we have night lights." And I just kind of thought, oh, I never really thought of that. But I had a nightlight as a kid, so now I'm thinking, okay.
Yeah. She shifts into actual mother mode for a little bit, doing one of those like little cutesy things you say to kids to like connect two things that really aren't connectable, but like it makes sense in a kid's brain, and you're like, that's why. Okay.
Yes, exactly. So what did you have?
All right. Now I'm mostly known for the funny quotes, but there were none. So
no funny quotes in this movie.
So the first one I have is one that is more just because it was just so kind of terrifying and menacing at the moment that it was, even in just, a quick 5 words, is Lizzie looking up and then going, "Mama, where'd the wolf go?" Chills.
Oh, boy. Oh.
Because it's like, that's not supposed to happen.
That reminds me of the scene in Jurassic Park when the goat disappears.
Oh, yeah. It's the goat.
Oh, my gosh.
It's the same thing. And then the other one I have on here just because, again, I cried a lot with this last part. But I had to write down the exact wording in the quotes because it was just powerful. And so, yeah, Lizzie's laying there, or Kathy's, comes down and lays next to where Lizzie is under her little makeshift tent. And, after they have their little back and forth of, "I don't hate you, I don't hate you," then it was that last thing that Kathy really said that hit me a lot, where she says, "You're going to be so much better than me. So much better. You just wait and see. It's going to be amazing. You're going to get past me, and you're going to be able to do whatever you want." But then what even broke me more then was Lizzie's response to that, which all she says is, "I just want you." And
oh my God.
It was rough.
It just rips your heart out.
Yeah.
It rips your heart out. And the time they show us that flashback is, it just makes you realize just how complicated this story was beyond the monster. There was just so much more in it.
So I choose to create my own happy ending in my head that, as we see at the end, Lizzie escapes that. It's day. Monster is dead anyway, but nothing's going to bother her in the day. So she's going to find a way to find somebody who that they can get her back to there. She can get her phone or get her to where her dad can find her, take her to a hospital, contact her dad. Dad gets her, and then she lives a happy life from there.
I hope
I'm just going to go ahead. I'm putting that in the universe there.
I think there's going to be a lot of therapy involved.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She'll have trauma for the rest of her life that she'll never escape. But she'll have a loving family, and she will, she'll have what good of her mom that she still can have to hold on to. Like her mom said, she got past her, and she's going to be able to move on and be something better.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Wow. Oh, this film definitely hit me in all, not what I was expecting.
Yeah. All right. So then we get to do our ranking, which this will be interesting to see how this goes. Especially when I let you go first, because that's how this works.
It works because Pake wants me to set the bar so he can decide if he wants to go above or below it.
Yeah.
If I graded this on the story alone of the mother and daughter, I would actually be thinking this doesn't fit in our genre at all.
Yeah.
So I have to shift back to the monster. I have to shift back to the other movies that we've covered about monsters. Mm-hmm. And I can't give this movie the score that I would give it if I was looking at it through a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
And so while I think this could be the movie that we disagree the most on, I am going to give it my lowest rating that I have given other than Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give it a 6.8.
Okay. You're kind of in the same ballpark, actually, so we do not disagree that much.
Oh, okay. All right. I feel better.
Yeah, it's the same reasoning. Is I was, a 6.8, 6.9 is kind of was sticking on just looking at, like, because the monster stuff was, as cool as some of it was very underwhelming.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of plot holes that we did talk about. We're like, well, if they would have just done this, so what bumps it up to like a quote unquote passing grade, just barely, for me is because the story hit me so hard. And like I said, the fact that it can make me cry, it did its job correctly that way. So that's where it gets into C territory, and I landed on a 7, just flat 7.
I feel better now.
Yeah.
We're not too far apart because in the time we've been doing these rankings, and we've talked about how many times, Pake, have we said the rankings don't matter really?
Mm-hmm. No, I'm surprised you went as low because I didn't want to talk about it too much before we started recording because I wanted to get a lot of this stuff out on recording where our listeners can hear us. But I was kind of going into this thinking, like, the way that you were kind of talking up things, I was like, oh man, she liked this movie a lot more than I did because I didn't actually. And so the fact that we both kind of were able to like talk about all the stuff that was really good about it, appreciate what was put into it, but still like on the grand scale be like, but
yeah,
it was, it did its job, but also like could have done a lot better in a lot of places. So
yeah, some of the movies and the monsters we've talked about are just way beyond this one, and I gave it a 6.8 because I liked the story, but the monster piece of it did not live up to what I was expecting or hoping for. However, I didn't dislike the movie. I just will probably not ever watch it again because it's just, the story itself can be traumatizing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'll watch it again.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
And the monster, despite the fact that I gave it a 6.8, I don't want to meet this monster on a dark road. I definitely don't.
No.
Definitely don't want to.
All right, it is time for some feedback this week. So let's see what we got. We have a little bit of feedback from Twitter, and then, of course, a classic voicemail from our good friend Steve.
I always look forward to that.
Yes, I'm excited. We don't listen to it beforehand here, so I'm excited. You never know what you're going to get with a Steve voicemail, and I'm always a little excited.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think we make it a practice not to listen to it till we both listen to it at the same time together when we're recording, which is why the reaction is always fun and interesting.
Yes. All right. Who wants to take this one?
I think I can take it. Our good friend Tony left us some feedback on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
I posted it with the caption, "Have you guys seen The Monster? If so, what did you think?" And so this is what Tony said. "Surprise, I have. Firstly, this movie was okay. The mother-daughter dynamic works great. I think Zoe Kazan is an incredible actress. The emotional tones are intense. The movie is scarier when you don't see the monster. I didn't think it was a scary monster. It looked bad. But there is a lot good here, and I would recommend it just to see these two actresses giving an amazing performance."
Nice. Yeah, thanks, Tony. It's really good. I always don't take this in any bad way or anything because I love feedback so much from everybody. But yeah, with Tony, it's like I appreciate it. It's like you're very like willing to just be like, yeah, I like this movie, or no, I didn't like this movie, and I appreciate that because it's good to just get like straight feedback on stuff. So I'm glad that you did enjoy this one, especially the acting and kind of the story, the main emotional story there, which really I think was the point of this movie. So I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate it too. I like that when Tony sends us feedback, she gives us the good, the bad. It doesn't matter. And I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. It's good to get her honest thoughts because not everyone is going to agree. And so the more feedback we get, it's cool to get all these interesting views on the movie we just covered.
Yeah. All right. So with that, let's get some very honest feedback from Steve, I'm sure, as well. He's another one that doesn't hold back. So.
Steve never holds back. He's always giving us whatever he thinks. Okay. So let's hear what Steve had to say this week about the movie The Monster.
Hey, Pake and Daphne, this is Steve, and this is for this week's movie. I can't believe you guys chose this one, but it's interesting. You know, I haven't watched it in quite a long time. Maybe not since it actually came out. You know, The Monster Squad was a great movie, and I just started it with these kids, and they're giving the other kid the monster test. I thought it was really super cool, and the little girl is super cute. And, but just, it's funny, they're talking about monster movies, and he's talking about a monster movie called Groundhog Day that's got like 12 parts to it, and it's about some axe murderer or something like that who comes back from the dead. So again, I'm going to give you some more, stuff from this, but I can't believe you guys chose The Monster Squad. All right. Whoa. This guy really is a werewolf. And the dog puts his paw in. I love it. How's the dog get up here anyway? Scary German guy is bitching. Okay, so this Frankenstein is nice. That kid just smacked that other kid in the head with the antenna of the walkie-talkie. That's hilarious. Only in the late 80s could you have a character named Fat Kid, and that everybody just calls him Fat Kid. All right, I've had my fun. I'm going to finish watching Monster Squad and send this along. But did you really think I'm going to watch a movie called The Monster about a mother and a daughter who are like stranded on a road and some creature is attacking them? Yeah, no, I'm out. But as I've always said, I love you guys and I love the podcast. So I love giving you something.
Oh my God.
Well, Steve, I don't know quite what to say.
Yeah, that's something I know about Steve, and I never think about it until we get to this point. It's like, he doesn't do scary movies.
No.
That's not his thing. And so he just took an interesting approach of like, well, I'm not going to watch that one, so I'll watch something different and tell you what I thought of it.
Yeah. So for those of you who may not know what movie Steve was reviewing that wasn't 2016's The Monster, he was actually looking at a movie from 1987 called The Monster Squad. It's a really fun comedy horror film that in the 80s was a lot of fun. I haven't seen it since then, but it's a real treasure, and I guess I'm going to have to go back and watch it now.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen it. I don't know anything about it. So, I mean, hey, if it fits and we end up covering it sometime down the road here, I don't know, then, I mean, we already have feedback from Steve on it.
I know, it's great. I mean, maybe we'll have to invite Steve to come on and talk about it with us.
Ooh, that might be even better.
I think so. I think this is one that he really likes.
And then we can replay that voicemail for him to remind him of that time.
Yes. I think we have a plan in place.
Ooh, yes.
We definitely have a plan in place. Sometimes, we do put these plans together just while we're doing the podcast, while we're recording it. We just come up with ideas for things that will, work in the future.
Yep. All right. I did say you never know what to expect, but that was way more on the side of unexpected, but I love it.
Wow. Just wow. Thank you, Steve.
Well, if you want to hear what else is going on in our podcast universe around us, if you want to hear more Steve and his just delightful humor and who he is, I love it. I love you, Steve. So if you want to hear more of him, of course, there's always Panels to Pixels, where him and Mark cover all kinds of stuff that's adapted from comics to the screen, TV, and movies. And, of course, right now they are covering WandaVision on Disney+. And I think they've covered the first 3 episodes at this point, so... which the 4th one just came out today. So you guys are... Yeah, you're good. They'll get on it. And then I think they're supposed to start covering Snowpiercer on TNT.
Yes.
Season 2 really soon.
I'm looking forward to that. I loved their coverage last year, and I was lucky enough to get to guest on the podcast a couple of times to talk about it, because I'm not really into new series when they come out, because I'm always afraid that's going to get canceled and I don't want to get invested. But with Snowpiercer, I really gave it a chance, and I'm glad I did, because season 2 just launched earlier this week.
Yeah, and they've already been greenlit for season 3 before that premiere even happened. It's
Love
crazy.
it.
TNT is really putting a lot into that show, and they have a lot of faith in it, and I think it's incredible, so I think it's a good call.
You know what's even better? Sean Bean is on it this season, and the cool thing about it is usually in TV shows he doesn't make it past the first season. So this year, wow.
They found the loophole, put him in season 2.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, of course, on Strange Indeed, Rima and Ben still covering CBS All Access's The Stand, which has been really good, in my opinion. It is kind of divisive, I guess. It's kind of one of those shows, it seems, that you either love it or you hate it. I'm falling on the love side, and so are Ben and Rima. So if you are really enjoying that show, highly recommend going over to Strange Indeed, checking out their coverage there. I've been on 2 episodes so far, and I've got 1 more to do with them, so that's been fun. And then if you listened last week to our episode with Jason on The Descent, and of course Jason and the Walking Dead cast and House Podcastica, his podcast, they're releasing the final 2 episodes of Cobra Kai Season 3 this week. And then on House Podcastica. And then Walking Dead cast, I think, is taking like a week off, because when the Walking Dead's not on, they do every 2 weeks episodes. So they've released Fight Club recently, and so the next one that they should be doing like next week or the week after, I got to make sure to know the exact schedule. Jason, let us know. Yeah, but they will be covering the Queen's Gambit. So watch through that. I think it's just like a limited series, so I think just the 1 season, however many episodes. So
yeah, I've heard really good things about it.
Yes.
Looking forward to hearing what they have to say, and I'm going to have to get on watching it because I haven't seen it yet.
Same here. It'll be a fun watch, though. I've heard a lot of good stuff, too. And then, of course, with what's coming up on podcasts, of course, we got to let them know, Daphne, what is coming up next here on Run for Your Lives?
Well, coming up next on Run for Your Lives, next week, we are going to break down and discuss Crawl, the American disaster horror film directed by Alexander Aja and released on July 12th, 2019. A hurricane, alligators, and a very small crawl space. What could be better?
Yeah, it's a fun one. It really is.
It is.
I really enjoyed that movie. So yeah, it was good to talk about, and hopefully you guys enjoy it as well. And if you do, that'll be next week. So if you have any, thoughts, feedback, anything for that one, then definitely be sure to send those our way. And you can do that either through our Facebook page at facebook.com/runforyourlivespodcast. You can email us or send us a voicemail at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter at RFYL Podcast or Instagram at Run for Your Lives Podcast. And if you're enjoying the show, please share the love. Tell your friends. Tell everybody, if you have a movie that we've covered that you think somebody really likes, send them the episode, let them know, or send them to our website at runforyourlivespodcast.com, where you and them can find the links to all of our social media, all of our podcast players, because we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, Pandora, YouTube, Stitcher, wherever.
Everywhere.
You can go on Apple Podcasts.
We're everywhere.
Give us, a rating, hopefully 5 stars, a review. Like a wrestling podcast that I listen to, give us 5 stars like Dave Meltzer, because it makes us feel too sweet. No.
You just had to throw that in there, didn't you?
Had to throw it in there. All right.
And I actually know what you mean when you say that, so I don't know if that's even stranger. But with that, Pake, we have reached the end of our episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I am Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run from a crazed monster on a long, dark, and deserted highway, you'd better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.